Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to April Hunter Lunch. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Andrew Fletcher. I'm the New South Wales Regional Director for the Property Council of Australia, and it's my great privilege to welcome you here today and see so many of you here at a packed City Hall. You think about the great tourism destinations around the world, there's generally one iconic landmark that comes to mind. Here in Australia, Northern Queensland has the Whitsundays, the Northern Territory has Uluru, the great cities of the world have iconic landmarks as well. Sydney has the Harbour Bridge and the Opera House. There is no reason why the Anzac Memorial Walkway can't become that iconic landmark that draws people to Newcastle. To tell us all about it, can you please welcome our first speaker, the man that had the idea, Neil Slater.
Thanks very much, everyone. I'm very honoured to be here today. I've had a few ideas in my days, and quite a few of them haven't come to fruition, but it's wonderful to be up here today to be able to speak about the Memorial Walk. And the thing that I think is most important about this is certainly it's a beautiful thing, but the most important thing I think was the way that it came together with everyone cooperating and the amount of people who put in their time and effort and energy once the project got started, and that's the thing that makes me really proud to be a Novocastrian and to be associated with this project. To give you some background on, kind of how this thing came to be, in 1983, I left my profession teaching and went to Thredbo, and I became a ski instructor and a bit of a ski bum. And we're sitting around the room at the start of the season, and all of the staff are going, where are you from? And they said, I'm from Byron Bay, or I'm from Dee Why, or I'm from here, and I'm from there. And I said I was from Newcastle, and I was kind of held down by the masses there, going, what's going on in Newcastle? How come you're there? And that was the image that we had in the outside world. And I'd lived in Newcastle, and I thought Newcastle's a fabulous place. So my view of it was to try and get as many people as possible to come to Newcastle rather than their image of what Newcastle was. So they had an image of Newcastle, but they'd never been here. So throughout my career, I've tried to encourage everyone that I could to come to our wonderful city and to see the things that we can be really proud of. And that sort of experience is where this idea jerried from. So the Bathers Way was a proposal that was put to council in about 1998, and the then Lord Mayor John Tate championed the cause, and Jenny Hawes was the tourism manager then, and they put together the proposal, which was the Bathers Way. And I thought, that thing is fabulous. What a great idea. We're always banging on about how the beaches and how our natural coastline is fabulous. But the Bathers Way ran up Memorial Drive, and it didn't go on top of the cliff. And I went, wow, the top of the cliff is where the real action is. The Bathers Way is a fabulous project, but the real crown in the Bathers Way is the potential to walk up on top of that cliff. And when we all get to walk up on top of there, you'll see that cliff is quite precarious and probably not a great place to walk. So I thought if we could put something up there, and being how I am, I'm thinking you just put a path up on top of it and everything will be wonderful. Anyway, I kept going down to Sculptures by the Sea, and I kept going, that area would be fabulous to put a Sculptures by the Sea. We need a lot more public art in Newcastle. We have a great vista to put this thing in. Why don't we do a Sculptures by the Sea along the Bathers Way? So I commissioned Barney Collins, my longtime friend and fellow Newcastle devotee, to do some drawings for me. And I thought, if I can do the drawings, if I can't get the guys up on top of the hill, I've got these drawings and I can show them how spectacular it was. Barney didn't charge me for the drawings. He fell in love with the project, and he then drove the project from there. Barney did a historical review of the thing as part of it, and it went from Clifftop Walk to Memorial Walk. So my idea was just, let's walk along the cliff. I'd driven up Memorial Drive, I reckon, well, not a million times, but close enough to it, and never knew why Memorial Drive existed. I didn't know why the name was there, and I hope I wasn't alone in that. So Barney found out that the thing was indeed a memorial to those from the First World War, and from there it became the Memorial Walk. And with that impetus, we had a magic thing for Newcastle. We had a 100-year anniversary. We had a date it had to be completed by. You can't do it on the 26th of April. That's not going to work. So we had all of this impetus to make sure if this project were going to happen, it was going to happen by then. The state government said that if Tim won, they would give him the money to do the project. The Liberals won. The Liberals didn't give him the money. But Tim was undaunted. He went to BHP Billiton and he asked BHP Billiton for the funding. They gave us $3 million. And from that $3 million, we knew we had a project. We had funding. Government loves dollar for dollar funding. So we had a very, very good chance of this project getting up. So then everybody kicked into high gear. So I'd just like us to dream big in Newcastle, ask for a lot from our politicians, and I'd like everyone to think about Merriweather Baths to Glenrock, Glenrock to Fernley, and to keep utilising our natural resources. Don't give up here. Thanks very much for having me. Thank you.
The big important thing is to remember how projects get underway. They don't necessarily get underway with design or ideas, they actually get underway with funding. And securing that funding is a crucial item. And as Neil said, it really got underway when Tim Owen approached BHP, because we tied together the 100 years of World War I and Anzac and Gallipoli with the fact that it was 100 years since BHP had opened as well in 2015. BHP opened in 1915, just as World War I was starting, and they were required to provide steel in the form of railway lines, ammunition and shipping plate to build ships with for the effort, or the World War I effort. So we saw a real connection between BHP and what we were trying to do. Tim had the ability to go and sit and talk with BHP. And as soon as they understood what our idea was, they came on board straight away. They gave us a commitment of funding of $3 million with the view that the project could never go above $4 million. At that stage, we only designed the project from Strzelecki car park to the Trigg station, because that's all we could afford within the funding. That then came together and we could show them that we could actually achieve it. We then convinced Jeff McCloy to really have a look at the rest of the walk. Initially we said no, we couldn't afford it to go from the Trigg station to Memorial Walk, but Jeff and the council saw that it was important. And through the council funding, that then came to the full length of the walk, which allows it to be fully circular and linked to Bathers Way. With the input of Northrop, Neil Petherbridge and Mark Sturgis, we've ended up with a beautifully designed structure. It does display its structural engineering very, very well. And when you go and you walk on the bridge, you will see that you can see how it actually works, how each bridge span grows 25 to 30 millimetres every day, with the sun heating it up and then the night cooling it down. So you can actually still see those slide bolts and how they work. From day one, we had historians working on it because we understood that if we were producing an icon for Newcastle, it had to come from depth, a historic depth. And David Dial, OAM, is the best military historian you will ever come across. He lives in the Hunter Valley and he knows everything about every person who enlisted in World War I. Everything they did, who they were and what they were. And it was through him that we tied the whole walk, not only to soldiers and the Army, but also to the Air Force, to the Navy, to the Light Horsemen, and also to nurses. This is the first thing of its kind where all of those people that have enlisted, no matter who they were or what they were, whether they were male, whether they were female, whether they were Aboriginal, their name, their family name is on the walk. Everybody that's come near the project falls in love with the project. And the cooperation you get out and the pride in workmanship that you get from every individual worker. That, you know, it might have just been the labourer, but they wanted to be there and they wanted to do it. That was great for us because it's not only kept it on budget, it's also kept it on time. Our first drawings, as Neil said, they were like Bondi to Coogee, or Bondi to Bronte, the walks in Sydney. They were a clifftop walk, mainly made out of timber and composite fibre materials that they were made out of. We had that as an example, and that's the one we took. When the RMS came along and they said, well, you can't really do it on that walkway, we had to think differently. So you can see here, even in those photographs, the amount of erosion on the cliff. The cliff itself in that location probably won't last for that much longer. Parts of it in 20 years will be a lot less than what you see now. It was exacerbated by the introduction of Memorial Drive, and a lot of people think it's a natural headland, when in fact it's actually a quarry. Memorial Drive was created from a quarry, which is up at Strzelecki Lookout. So if you look at the landside cliff face, that was quarried out to create Memorial Drive in 1921 to commemorate World War I, but also to link Merewether to the city. As I said, or as Neil said, Tim Owen approached BHP, and that's the letter that made this project start. It's a letter from a guy called Alan Dan, who still sits on the oversight committee of Memorial Walk Trust, and it says, yep, we're in, but you've still got to produce it. It came with a sting. It said, you know, if you're going to do it, you've got to do it properly, and you can't go over budget. At that same time, this was the first introduction of the curving structure, and it came from an idea that when RMS came back with their design, it was a basic set of columns with a trussed bridge made out of timber. And we believed that it needed to be far more dynamic. So this curving structure was introduced, and it came from the idea that the way they identify soldiers' remains in the battlefields of Europe these days is if they can get a piece of DNA, they can actually identify the family who that DNA comes from, and therefore go forward and identify the soldier. The simple piers or piles or columns that the RMS had come up with, we turned it into the Y columns. We did ask the question, we consciously asked the question why. So we produced a Y. The answer to that is why not, right? So as you go between each bridge, there's a story about a particular Defence Force service, whether it's airmen or whether it's the Navy or the Army or nurses, but then also the ability to put 3,859 family names. We struggled with this for quite a while, and a lot of people wanted us to put the 11-odd thousand names of every individual serviceman that enlisted, and the criteria was that they actually had to enlist within the Hunter Valley, so that a child with that name can walk up there and see their name. So they then question where their relative came from, and they do the research on that. So it's not like the War Memorial in Canberra, where you can go up and you can see the name. Here, you've got to do some work. The stories then get told, as I said, as you walk along, right? And this is the last man going in, which was photographed on an iPhone sitting in a gutter propped up by a wallet. And then the final photographs with its lights on. And as I said, the walk is equally as spectacular by day as by night. The lighting, with the help of Gavin McRae from Stramac and a guy called Matt Thomas, who was the electrician, has produced an unbelievable lighting to it. These photographs were taken by the electrician's son, and they are magnificent. Thank you. Sorry.
I was originally introduced to this project by Barney Collins in about 2012, when all those sketches and things were going around. He got us in to give him a bit of advice. The original scheme that he showed me was much tougher than the one that you just saw. It actually had the walkway cantilevering over the side of the cliff. At the time this went to tender, this was the largest stainless steel fabrication project in the country, other than the LNG stuff up on the Northwest Shelf. So there was lots of people interested in it, I can assure you. I had phone calls from all over the country. It's the large, also as I understand it, and I'm happy to be corrected here, the largest privately funded centenary project in the country for the Anzac centenary. So that's a pretty impressive couple of stats. So that's a bit about the normal process, and particularly about vision. And Neil Slater is a visionary. I'm sure at some point they will build a statue of him in Newcastle to dedicate it to the fact that he's an ideas man, and he is someone who, and that's what we need. We need more of those people. Unfortunately, the other slide sort of tells the story. This is just a bit about the normal process of design. So normally architects want something we can't afford or way out over the top. Engineer usually wants to make it do a few more things that it didn't already do. So, and then we get a few others that come along, the guys that get in the road. Particularly the QS. We'll have a crack at them today. I assume you're looking for something a bit more like this, a bit delicate and a bit more elegant. So that's kind of part of that, and then that developed, and there's been lots of different versions, and I don't think you've got any idea how many versions there've been. And there's lots of input, and this has been a very collaborative process, and it's always the great projects, and I can count them in my career in 25 years on one hand of those sorts of projects. There's not a lot of them, where everyone gets in behind a project and really puts their all into it. And Steve Rushworth, I acknowledge again, was instrumental in this form, as was Barney and Brendan and Mark from my office. Everyone put a big heap of work into getting this to where it got to. So as you can see on that slide, it's a very, very narrow little peninsula up the top there. It's supposed to be rock, but it's probably better described as a strong clay. It's very, very weak material, and that came with its own challenges. And the idea of cantilevering over the cliff would have been, I wouldn't say impossible, but it would have been a pretty tough gig, and it would have cost us a lot more money. Also, my old favourite was involved again, mine subsidence. So this is the red outline is our site. That's the yard seam, which is the upper level seam, which in our site there's about the contours of depth, so that's 40 to 50, 60 metres underground. And then a good old borehole seam down further, which is much deeper, 116 or so there. So you can see how extensive the mining is again under Newcastle and how far it goes out under the sea. That hatch stuff, that generally means they've come back and extracted everything, so there's nothing left. So they used to go and put a heap of pit props in, go and dig it all out, and then they get the horses out at the end and rip out the props and let the whole roof come down. So the sketch there was the sketch that EJ came up with the handrails to replicate the old 303 rifle. Unfortunately, I think it's unfortunate, others may not, it got politically corrected and turned into something a bit more abstract. These bridge sections only weigh about 9 tonnes. Dynamics is a big deal, so the bridge will always move, it's always going to go up and down a little bit. The idea is to make sure that it's not uncomfortable for people walking along it when it does move. So you will feel the bridge move, particularly if you're walking on the bridge and you're the only person on it and someone comes running past you, you will feel it. That's probably the worst case scenario. Once lots of people get on it, you'll feel less and less and less because there's more weight on the bridge. But you do feel people running past you when you're walking on the bridge, I can assure you. Don't be alarmed, it's supposed to move. Just quickly on the footings, so board piles, bolted connection at the bottom, that was actually an idea from Wagers. This is the column going up. You can see on the photo on your right, the bolted connection there, so we just bolted the column straight up once we lifted them into place so we didn't have to prop them. That's half the bridge up and the columns in place. Steel fabrication drawings had to be produced, massive amount of drawings to go through and sort out and make sure everything was going to fit, which we all breathed a sigh of relief when it all went together nicely. This is how it starts off in the workshop, with effectively the steel coming straight out of the mill and getting welded up before it gets polished. A lot of weld testing going on to make sure that we didn't have any failures in any welds. There's also a lot of materials testing programs. We actually flew samples from China over to have them tested before the stuff was shipped to make sure we got what we thought we were going to get. Completed fabrication of one of the sections, which had all the decking and stuff put on before it was lifted in place, and the handrails. And then this is the FRP composite section that Wagner's from Toowoomba up in Queensland did down the bottom. That whole thing, the two halves took about 3 hours on 2 different nights to put the whole up, so about 6 hours in erection in total for the bridge sections, which is absolutely fantastic. These projects that come together that are like this, there's no ego involved, and there was no ego involved from anyone involved in the project. Quality design team, collaborative atmosphere, listening to everyone, not saying no ever to anyone's idea until it's really been exhausted, and using the Newcastle network. And I talk about this, and I want to talk about this really briefly. If you want to get anything built in this town, if you ring up one person and you tell them what your problem is, if they can't help you, they will put you onto someone else, and that person will be either able to do it for you, or they'll be able to put you onto the person who can do it for you. It's about 2 degrees of separation in this town to find someone who can do something. And our shipbuilding history and mining and resources thing makes that, I think, unique in the world. So thank you very much.